Spare Me, Great Lord, opens with a woman holding her baby son in the rain. The woman, who appeared exhausted, then attempted to find shelter and hide from a group of people who were pursuing her. In desperation, the woman gave her baby son to the mistress of the house and then simply left. The woman, however, never returned to pick up her baby son until 18 years had passed and the baby son, named Lu Shu, had grown up. That night, while visiting the fireworks festival with his sister, Lu Xiaoyu, Lu Shu overheard some people discussing people with superpowers. Lu Shu did not necessarily believe the viral news because, according to him, there were no superhumans in this world. However, as he and Xiaoyu watched a man on stage perform fire magic, Lu Shu felt a strange, radiant energy emanating from the necklace his mother had given him. He then assumed that the man wasn't performing magic tricks, but rather possessed fire-controlling superpowers. Lu Shu then crept backstage with his sister, and they were shocked to see a group of people dressed in black ambush the firebending man, and then shoot him with stun guns. They soon discovered Lu Shu and Xiaoyu, so Lu Shu devised an excuse so that they would not be suspected. Even though he and his sister were eventually released, the group's leader appeared to still suspect Lu Shu. Similarly, Lu Shu suspected they were not the police as they claimed. Lu Shu and Xiaoyu were then approached by a young man named Jai Wei, who inquired about what had occurred backstage. Lu Shu, on the other hand, did not respond and immediately left. Although Lu Shu considered Xiaoyu to be his little sister, they were not blood relatives. Orphans Lu Shu and Xiaoyu meet at an orphanage run by a woman who met Lu Shu's mother 18 years ago. Lu Shu was frequently bullied by other children as a child, and Xiaoyu was the only child who cared about him. As a result, Lu Shu adored Xiaoyu and considered her to be his younger sister. Xiaoyu accompanied Lu Shu after he left the orphanage to live independently. The mishap occurred as he was about to cross the street to buy noodles. Lu Shu was unaware that a vehicle was approaching him at high speed. He couldn't avoid the collision and ended up bloodied on the ground. However, the accident caused the necklace his mother had given him to react, and Lu Shu miraculously felt no pain and got up as if nothing had happened. He believed he had superhuman abilities because he had survived the fatal accident. Lu Shu rushed home, covered in blood, realizing that something had happened to him. He then asked Xiaoyu to cook the noodles while he went to the bathroom. Inside the room, Lu Shu was trying to figure out what had happened to him when he noticed something on his left hand emitting a golden glow. When Lu Shu touched it, a golden screen appeared in front of him, displaying the points he had accumulated while inadvertently scaring people on his way home. Lu Shu realized he had superpowers right away. The more often he made others show negative emotions, the more points he would receive. Following that, a lucky spin the wheel game appeared on the screen, and he tried his luck with the points he had. Despite the fact that he had failed to obtain the prize several times and his points were nearly depleted, Lu Shu was able to obtain a very rare gift in which he felt a very powerful force seeping into his body. Not long after, Lu Shu, who had heard about a fire near his house, took the initiative to go to the roof and see what had happened because he had a strange feeling. Lu Shu noticed several men walking along the roofs of people's houses as he climbed the roof. Lu Shu realized they were the same people who had knocked out the firebending man backstage as they approached. Lu Shu then went underground, but one of them noticed his presence and Lu Shu was apprehended. Lu Shu then duped them into thinking he was going to pick up radishes drying on his roof. They didn't even suspect Lu Shu because he was carrying a basket full of radishes. However, after they had left and Lu Shu had returned to the house, there was an unexpected sound of something falling from the roof. When Lu Shu and Xiaoyu looked outside, they discovered that the person who had fallen earlier was the firebending man, who was most likely attempting to flee. Lu Shu deliberately irritated him in order to capitalize on the man's negative emotions. The man, irritated that Lu Shu continued to play with him, used firepower to burn Lu Shu's arm. But, strangely, the fire's power had no effect on Lu Shu, as if he could neutralize it. The man appeared surprised that his strength had no effect on Lu Shu. Because his efforts were futile, the man was eventually abandoned there. After that, Lu Shu returned to the room, and his physical strength increased dramatically after consuming the magic pill displayed on the golden screen in front of him. Lu Shu tried to make ends meet and pay his school fees by selling food because his life was very poor. Even though he had to sell before school, Lu Shu was never embarrassed in front of his friends, who frequently passed by where he was selling. When one of his classmates was about to mock him for being so poor that he had to sell, Lu Shu purposefully irritated the young man in order to gain many points. While at school, Lu Shu witnesses a shocking incident in which a student named Lai Kai attacks a teacher after his powers are awakened. In such a perilous situation, Lu Shu devised a plan to instill fear in the many people present. He was finally able to stop Lai Kai and gain many points from the negative emotions of the people gathered there thanks to his ingenuity. One of his classmates, a girl named Ling Ling, then praised Lu Shu's ingenuity, though in the end, Ling Ling's negative emotions helped Lu Shu a lot. Following that, Lu Shu and the rest of his classmates had to agree to have blood samples taken to see if their powers had also awakened. When Lu Shu returned home, he attempted to heal Xiaoyu with the healing pills he obtained from the lucky spin of the wheel. After several rounds of gacha, Lu Shu obtained the healing pill and gave it to Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu recovered quickly and returned to normal health after drinking it. The next day at school, the students are astounded by the results of a blood sample test, which reveal that Lu Shu is one of those whose powers have been awakened. It didn't stop there, as many other students' powers were awakened. The school then established a special class for them, with a man named Zai Fei serving as the class supervisor. Lu Shu was taken aback when he saw Zai Fei, because that man was the one who had pursued the firebending man. Following that, Jiang Xiuyi, a transfer student in Lu Shu's class, was discovered to be awakened and would be placed in a special class. Xiuyi turned out to be a man, despite his beautiful skin and smooth skin. Lu Shu and the disciples whose powers had been awakened gathered in the evening at a location where they would conduct additional tests to determine their level of strength, which was classified alphabetically, with a being the highest level. After taking the test, Lu Shu discovered that he was at level F, or the lowest level. As a result, he became a target for bullying. But he didn't mind because he had managed to irritate many people, which was more profitable for him. Lu Shu finally demonstrated his superpowers to his sister, began performing gacha, and received an item. The item, however, was absorbed into Xiaoyu's body, causing her super strength to awaken. Lu Shu then assumed that this power belonged to Xiaoyu. Lu Shu then met his next-door neighbor, an elderly man who was practicing swordsmanship. The old man offered to teach Lu Shu, but he immediately declined, leaving the old man alone. Lu Shu went about his business as usual, selling, going to school, and accumulating points from the negative emotions of those around him. Lu Shu received a magical sword one day after performing gacha. He had no idea how to use the sword, however. Lu Shu discovered that Zai Fei was a member of the World Network Organization thanks to information provided by Xiuyi. The Heavenly Network was the organization above them, and with less than 10 members, they were extremely powerful people. That night, Lu Shu noticed Heavenly Network Organization members visiting the old man who had been abandoned next to him. The old man named Lai turned out to be one of the Heavenly Network's most respected higher-ups. Lu Shu finally accepted Master Lai's offer and began training with the old man. Master Lai advised Lu Shu to use his power to protect and save others after he mastered several advanced swordsmanship techniques. Lu Shu, on the other hand, appears to only care about his sister and wishes to always protect her because Xiaoyu is the most precious person to him. One of Master Lai's best disciples, Zai Shujin, approached him one day and invited him to rejoin the Heavenly Network. They joined forces to investigate a ruin. Master Lai, on the other hand, refused because he didn't want to meddle with Heavenly Network's affairs after deciding to retire. That night, Lu Shu and Xiaoyu took a strength test, and Xiaoyu's strength was determined to be a level, while Lu Shu's true strength was unmeasurable. However, Lu Shu chose to conceal his power in order to avoid causing trouble. Following that, Lu Shu and Xiaoyu began to test each other's abilities and seemed astounded by their superpowers. Soon after, Lu Shu and Xiaoyu rushed to the site of the big explosion, which was caused by a fight between the Earth Network and a dangerous group with a fairly high level of super strength. Lu Shu and Xiaoyu appeared to be standing back and watching the fight. Lu Shu confidently launched an attack to test his strength after learning a little about their strength. He was able to easily defeat all of them, including Zai Fei and the Earth Network, who attacked him for being a member of the group. Because Zai Fei and the others couldn't recognize Lu Shu due to the dark aura that surrounded him, he had more freedom in his actions. Lu Shu then took Xiaoyu to a location where she used her power to collect the energy of a deceased person. Shujin, on the other hand, was meeting with members of the Heavenly Network and Earth Network organizations to discuss Lu Shu and his immense power. They regarded Lu Shu as the most dangerous threat because they couldn't determine his identity or level of strength. Lu Shu returned to selling as usual after that. Lu Shu reasoned that because his merchandise was always sold out, he might be able to buy a house with this income. That night, Xiaoyu surprised Lu Shu by resurrecting the dead man's spirit. In fact, she can learn about the person who turned out to be a gang of robbers past. Xiaoyu informed Lu Shu that the robbers had hidden their looted money somewhere. Then Xiaoyu invited Lu Shu to take the money. However, Lu Shu refused because the money did not belong to them. Nonetheless, he admired Xiaoyu's good intentions in wanting to use the money to buy a house. Lu Shu then warned Xiaoyu not to use her power or show it to others because it could endanger their safety. Xiuyi told Lu Shu at school that people with awakened powers were becoming more common. At the same time, there is a mysterious place with enormous spiritual power known as the Blessed Land. Xiaoyu went on to say that whatever came from the Blessed Land would be extremely expensive. Lu Shu seemed interested in going there after hearing this. Following that, all of the disciples gathered in the field to greet their new principal, a man named Lu Xiaoyu. When Lu Shu met the man, he immediately recognized that he possessed great power and was a member of the Heavenly Network organization. That evening, Lu Xiaoyu also tutored a special class in which he advised students to train hard and one day join the Heavenly Network. Lu Xiaoyu then showed a video of a previous Heavenly Network battle in which Lu Shu had secretly participated. Lu Xiaoyu then warned the disciples to be wary of this mysterious man who wielded enormous spiritual power and managed to flee before the Heavenly Network apprehended him. The disciples then distributed Philosopher's Stones, which could boost their spiritual strength. Lu Shu, on the other hand, intended to sell the stone, because the enchanted stone would be extremely expensive if sold on the black market. He entrusted his possession of the stone to Xiaoyu to sell and regarded him as his best friend for his assistance. To cut a long story short, Lu Shu returned home and presented Xiaoyu with a cell phone. Not only that, but he told her that they might be buying the house they were living in soon. When she heard this, Xiaoyu smiled and hugged her brother. Lu Shu then used the points he had accumulated thus far to increase his power level. Soon after, Lu Shu received word that all special class students would be sent on a mission to protect the area surrounding the ruins, the site of the emergence of tremendous spiritual energy. Because the Heavenly Network and the officials in charge have been unable to determine the amount of spiritual power present, and the threats to it, the disciples have been tasked with monitoring and protecting the area surrounding the ruins. Once there, Zai instructed the disciples to keep their mission a secret from others, and that anyone who leaked the secret mission would be tried by the military tribunal. Disciples were also required to practice because being near the ruins could boost their spiritual strength. Lu Shu, who had a unique training method, then took advantage of the opportunity to annoy his friend, a young man named Liu Lai, in order to gain many points and increase his strength. Lu Shu was overjoyed to prank Liu Lai because he was constantly annoyed with him and gave Lu Shu a lot of points with his negative emotions. Xiaoyu appeared concerned about her brother, who couldn't be reached by phone due to a lack of signal. Lu Shu finally earned many points after a few days of being there and annoying Liu Lai all night, which he then used to increase his strength, making him immune to anything. Lu Shu, who had underestimated him due to his level F strength, challenged him to an arm wrestling match. Lu Shu, on the other hand, could easily defeat him in a matter of seconds. When Zai saw this, he challenged Lu Shu to arm wrestling. Zai praised Lu Shu and said he had good potential in the future after feeling his physical strength, which allowed him to beat him in arm wrestling. Not long after, a thick fog appeared, quickly leading to the location. The mist turned out to be a portal that could transport anyone who passed through it into the ruins region. Everyone panicked and fled to avoid becoming trapped in the fog. Lu Shu and Xiaoyu also attempted to flee. However, the two became separated, and Lu Shu became trapped in the realm of the ruins. Lu Shu was attacked by several terrifying undead there, but he defeated them all. He then encountered and assisted a group of people who had also been attacked by a swarm of zombies. However, after those people failed to assist him when he was attacked by zombies, Lu Shu angrily left them. Lu Shu then went exploring to find out what really happened there. He rushed towards a light flare that shot into the air after defeating several zombies and picking up their swords. The light from the flare was actually from a young man named Chang Huani, who was a spy from another country. Chang attempted to flee, but Lu Shu pursued him because he was suspicious of him. Chang attempted to kill Lu Shu at every opportunity but was always unsuccessful. When Lu Shu and Chang finally fought, Lu Shu appeared to be overwhelmed by Chang in close combat. Lu Shu, on the other hand, eventually defeated Chang after employing his ultimate move. Lu Shu then continued his journey until he reached a forest. Lu Shu, who was starving, eventually discovered a very fruitful apple tree. He then took some apples without thinking, but was met with resistance from a swarm of squirrels who thought he had stolen their food. When the squirrels threw stones at him, Lu Shu bolted. Lu Shu decided to rest while eating his apple in the late afternoon. He realized he had circled the ruins after running quite a distance but finding no one. Lu Shu intended to return to his original location, knowing that the only way out of the ruins was to find the spiritual power core at their center. Instead, Lu Shu came across a pack of hungry wolves with a fair amount of strength. He finally rushed to escape the wolves' pursuit because it was impossible to defeat them all. Being inside the ruins can indeed increase his strength, not only spiritually but also physically. Lu Shu then managed to elude the oncoming wolves and return to his original location, where the group of people he had saved was still present. They were all amazed that Lu Shu was still alive after fighting off hordes of zombies behind the hill. Not only that, but despite his low level of strength, Lu Shu was completely unharmed. Lu Shu was then begged to stay and protect them by one of them. But, once again, he refused, claiming that he would only stay the night and continue his journey the next day. Lu Shu finally continued his journey the next day. The demon horse army, however, unexpectedly blocked Lu Shu, who immediately threw arrows at him. Lu Shu was able to avoid their attacks and hide in a safe location. Members of the Earth Network organization, on the other hand, were watching the demon horse troop from a safe distance. They are now having difficulty because the army has grown in size as a result of their failure to kill the leader of the demon cavalry army. Meanwhile, Lu Shu emerges from behind a hill where he ambushes the demon army and fights alone. Lu Shu defeated the demon army and took all of their weapons, which surprised everyone because defeating the demon army required at least level C strength. But Lu Shu, who possessed F-level strength, could easily defeat them on his own. Lu Shu then sold the demon army's spears and other weapons to members of the Earth Network and Heavenly Network organizations, as well as other disciples. Following that, they worked together to reach the heart of the ruins and escape. Lu Shu and the others decided to rest in the evening. He then gave the apple he had picked up in the forest to the network members because they had worked so hard to protect the disciples, even sacrificing their lives. However, if the disciples wanted the apple, Lu Shu demanded a high price. Despite being regarded as a selfish, mercenary individual, he appeared relaxed and responded to their comments by stating that none of them had ever experienced hardship or become poor. Following that, Lu Shu and the others were confronted by a swarm of dead spirits that surrounded them. He worked hard to keep the spiritual sword from escaping from within his body because he didn't want to show off his power in front of everyone. However, when the spirits of the dead who were about to attack saw Lu Shu's spiritual power, they became terrified and fled. Lu Shu and his companions eventually arrived at the center of the ruins, where a large hole and a group of people had been there first. With so many people present, Lu Shu seized the opportunity to resume selling. Aside from Lu Shu, it turns out that there is a girl named Cao Qingsai who can easily defeat the demon army. The Heavenly Network members then summoned Lu Shu and Cao Qingsai because their strength stood out from the rest. The Heavenly Network investigated the hole's depth, which turned out to be quite deep and contained another large hole with far greater spiritual power. Lu Shu decided to take a break while the Heavenly Network members were strategizing, realizing that there were 9 spies among them. However, he had no idea what the spies looked like. Lu Shu was eventually reunited with Shui, who was said to be capable of defeating the 4 demon horsemen on his own. They all decided to sleep and rest after eating the apple that the principal had given them. However, after everyone had fallen asleep, Lu Shu noticed that a group of people had sneaked into the hole first, and they turned out to be spies. Lu Shu managed to stop one of them and then yelled for everyone to wake up. However, before he could question the person for information, the principal arrived and immediately beat the man down, making Lu Shu suspicious of the principal. To make a long story short, Lu Shu and the others eventually made their way into the big hole and followed a path that led them to a magnificent palace guarded by an army of demons. A fight between network members and the demon army was unavoidable. Cao Qingsai displayed extraordinary fighting skills against the demon army, whereas Lu Shu appeared relaxed because the demon army recognized his terrifying power and chose to avoid it. Lu Shu decided to sneak into the palace, hoping to find the valuable ruins treasure, after encountering little resistance from the demon army. When Lu Shu entered a room he thought contained the treasure, he was met with several demon warriors guarding the area. However, just as they were about to attack him, the spiritual sword within Lu Shu's body appeared, causing everyone to shudder in fear and return to their defensive stance. Outside the palace, everyone appeared to be overwhelmed by the demon army that was so difficult to defeat. When fighting the demon army leader, even the principal with the highest power level appeared overwhelmed. In their desperation to defeat the demon army and escape the ruins, Lu Shu apparently discovered the treasure that was also the core of the ruins, allowing them all to return to where they came from and the mist to dissipate. Following that, all injured people were immediately treated, and all items taken from the ruins had to be turned over to the Heavenly Network. Shui, on the other hand, appeared panicked while searching for Lu Shu's location because he was nowhere to be found. Shui assumed that Lu Shu had died and vanished into nothingness. But then Lu Shu appeared, handing over the 5 spears he had taken from the demon army. Lu Shu then hurried home because he was concerned about Xiaoyu's condition. Not long after that, Lu Shu finally met his little sister, who had been looking forward to his return for so long. The treasures of the ruins possessed extremely formidable spiritual power, allowing anyone who possessed them to use God-level spiritual power at any time and from any location. Furthermore, the treasure in the form of a golden seal turned out to be an infinite storage space, with a door leading to the magnificent palace that had previously been in the ruins. Meanwhile, Cai Sujin and his subordinate, a man named Nai Ting, were debating the final seconds that transpired at the heart of the ruins before someone took the gold seal and returned everyone with the power of the golden seal. Until now, the principal and Heavenly Network had been trying to figure out who had stolen the golden seal. Because the Golden Seal possessed God-level spiritual power, Naiting ordered all of his men to report any unusual spiritual power appearances immediately. Zai Sujin then assigned Naiting to supervise the two most outstanding students in the special class, Cao Qingsai and Lu Shu, after determining that the principal's performance and special class were unfavorable. Cao Qingsai possessed a level spiritual strength, so Zai Sujin requested that they pay closer attention to her development because she had great potential in the future. The moral of this anime is to never underestimate someone who appears to be weak, because true strength comes not from physical toughness or great talent, but from a strong desire to protect and make loved ones happy. This was it for today. Subscribe to my channel to watch more recaps.